Family, justice, honor. These are the values guiding my blade. The truth is written in blood, and the shadows are where I stride. I am Giovanni Auditore, and like my ancestors before me, I am an assassin. Hello, and welcome to Visions of the Past, an Assassin's Creed lore podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm glad to see that you have found this podcast. Today we're going to talk about the Italian Brotherhood of Assassins, the Assassins Guild that gave us that quote. When talking about this Guild of Assassins, the first thing we have to do is establish when it was first created. Do we go all the way back to the Brotherhood that was created by Aya, or do we only talk about the Brotherhood that was established after the Polos returned to Venice, after they established the Guild in Constantinople? For me, and the purpose of this podcast, Aya's Guild will be known as the Hidden Ones of Rome, and the one established by the Polos as the Italian Brotherhood. I want to do this to differentiate from the Hidden Ones and the Assassin's Brotherhood, even though the Hidden Ones, at this point, seemingly leads directly into the formation of the Assassins. The Italian Brotherhood of Assassins has had countless numbers of members to fill out its ranks over the years. People like Marco Polo and Ezio Auditore, and to get into each assassin's biography, we'd be here all day. So, while we will mention the people of the Brotherhood, I'm not going to go into a full biography on each of them. With that being said, most of the information that we have about the Italian Brotherhood comes from Assassin's Creed 2 and its novel, Assassin's Creed Renaissance, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and its novel of the same name, Assassin's Creed Project Legacy, and Assassin's Creed Initiates. Smaller tidbits of information also come from Assassin's Creed Lineage, Assassin's Creed Revelations and its novel of the same name, and possibly Assassin's Creed 2 Discovery, though I dispute its canonicity. The Italian Brotherhood of Assassins date back to 1255, when Niccolo and Maffeo Polo met and were invited to stay at the fortress of Masyaf by the assassin Darin ibn La'ahad, arriving in January of 1257. In July of 1257, the Polo brothers would find themselves being trained as assassins by not only Darim, but his father Altair. And Niccolo, in particular, would spend a lot of time listening to Altair about his life. And while Maffeo grew restless, Niccolo would tell him of Altair's life, causing Maffeo to become dedicated to the assassin cause. These conversations would lead to Niccolo's journal that detailed Altair's life story, in which he would later title The Secret Crusade. When the Mongols attacked Masyaf on August 12, 1257, the Polos would leave with Altair's codex and the keys to Masyaf's library, headed for Constantinople, where they would build a fully functioning guild by 1259. Over the next 10 years, they would search the Mongol Empire for Altair's codex that was taken from them on their way to Constantinople. They would be unsuccessful and would return to Venice in 1269. After they returned to Venice, the Polos would not only establish the Italian Brotherhood, but they would also start to train Niccolo's son Marco to be an assassin. 2 years after the start of Marco's training, the three Polos would travel to the Mongol Empire, spending time in the court of Kublai Khan for roughly 17 years. Marco would eventually retrieve Altair's codex and return to Venice with it in 1295. It is unclear when, but sometime between when the Polos left in 1271 and 1321, the Assassin Brotherhood would grow to include both Dante Alighieri and the father of Domenico Auditore. Sometime in 1321, the Brotherhood would grow yet again with the introduction of Domenico himself, when he was tasked by both his father and his father's patron, Marco Polo, to take Dante Alighieri to Spain. Apprenticed under Alighieri, Domenico would learn the ways of the Brotherhood. His apprenticeship would be cut short, though, when Alighieri would be killed by Templars on September 14, 1321, while he was in Ravenna. Alighieri's death would be a revelation to the assassins that the Templars did not fade into the annals of history in 1307, like they thought they did with the public execution of their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. Domenico's father would order Domenico to sail immediately to Spain to fulfill Alighieri's mission of hiding Altair's codex, and Marco Polo would give him a small sheet of paper that had Polo's own personal bank account on it, so that Domenico could use it when he needed to. Domenico would set sail with his wife Isabetta and his son Renato under the guise of transporting cargo that was meant to be sold in Barcelona. Unfortunately, they were forced to take shelter in the harbor of Otranto to avoid a storm on September 25th. That night, the ship would be boarded by pirates employed by the Templar Order. Domenico would notice it too late and would be forced to break the codex up throughout his cargo. The pirates would demand the codex, but Domenico would tell them that everyone on board was drunk and that he had thrown it overboard. This would result in 2 of the pirates holding him down while the rest raped and murdered his wife Isabella and throwing her body overboard. Eventually, Domenico and Renato would also be thrown overboard while the pirates stole the cargo and sunk the ship. The next day, Domenico and Renato would start the overland journey to Florence. It seems as the journey took them roughly 3 years, as when they got to Florence, Domenico would withdraw some funds from the Polo account to rent a small room, and the next day would head to Venice in disguise to meet with his father and Polo. Domenico would find that both had already been killed. Marco Polo historically died on either January 8 or 9, 1324, and immediately would return to Florence. From that day forward, he would study the classics, take vocal lessons, and collect works on architecture to impersonate a nobleman in the Florentine court, taking the name Auditore and being accepted as part of the city's nobility. Eventually, Domenico would purchase and renovate what would become the Auditore Villa in Monteriggioni. It would be here that he would induct Renato into the Brotherhood and train him as an assassin. During the renovations, he built a sanctuary beneath the villa where he would lock away the armor of Altair and hide the assassin seals that acted as a key throughout Italy. In 1355, the Italian Brotherhood would come into the possession of a Shroud of Eden after stealing it from the Templar Joffre di Charnay. After studying the artifact, Renato ordered it to be hidden within the crypt that his father had built beneath Monteriggioni. Renato would also make sure that the official records were destroyed and send reports back to the church stating that the shroud was a forgery. It is unknown when Renato passed, but he would have had at least one son, as his grandson Mario Auditore was born on March 19, 1434, and Mario's younger brother Giovanni on May 3, 1436. These two would become assassins at an early age, but while Mario would eventually go on to be a condottiere, Giovanni would learn to be a banker. In time, though, Giovanni would leave Monteriggioni to join his relative Ilario Auditore in Florence. It is unknown if Ilario was an assassin himself, but he did serve as gonfaloniere to Cosimo de' Medici. In 1452, Giovanni would meet and marry Maria de' Mazzi. In 1454, a siege by Federico Montefeltro on behalf of Florence would lead Mario to find the Shroud of Eden that Renato had hidden away, but would give it to Giovanni to hide away from Monteriggioni. A year later, Giovanni would save Cosimo's grandson Lorenzo from drowning in the Arno, forging a close friendship with the two families that would last for generations. Sometime around 1456, Giovanni would represent a woman by the name of Paola, who was the daughter of a pair of assassins that was lost at sea, in her defense over the murder of a city guard. Giovanni would be able to win the case with a self-defense plea, after which Paola would join the assassins herself, founding and running La Rosa Colta in Florence. Sometime before 1476, Giovanni would reveal to Lorenzo that he was an assassin, which would lead Giovanni to undertaking several missions for him, including trying to save the life of the Duke of Milan, Galazzo Maria Sforza, which he would fail on December 26, 1476. This would eventually lead to a confrontation with the Grand Master of the Italian Rite of the Templar Order, Rodrigo Borgia, in Rome. Impressed with his skill, Borgia would offer Giovanni a place within the Templars, which he would refuse. Injured in this battle, Giovanni would make it home to Florence, where he would be tended to by his wife Maria and covered for by his older son Federico. 2 days later, Giovanni and his sons Federico and Petruccio would be arrested, but when his other son Ezio came home from delivering letters for Giovanni, he would find the palazzo upturned and ask their housekeeper Annetta to take his mother Maria and sister Claudia to a safe place. Annetta would agree and take them to her sister Paula's. After trying to secure the release of his family, Ezio would be in the crowd when his father and brothers were executed on December 29, 1476. Paolo would take in Ezio and teach him how to hide in a crowd, and recommended that he got his father's hidden blade repaired by Leonardo da Vinci. After doing these things, he would be able to enact his revenge on the man he felt responsible for his family's death, Umberto Alberti, on December 31st, 1476. He would then leave Florence with the intention to go to Spain with his mother and his sister to do his best to keep them safe. Early in January 1477, Ezio and his remaining family would be stopped outside of Monteriggioni, where they would be confronted by Vieri de' Pazzi, a rival of Ezio's, who had the intent to kill them. They would be saved, though, by Giovanni's brother Mario. Mario would convince Ezio to stay in Monteriggioni at least long enough to train to be able to keep Maria and Claudius safe on their trip to Spain. He would train until April 1478, when he learned that Mario had gone to San Gimignano to stop Vieri de' Pazzi, and on April 14th, he would join his uncle, eventually killing Vieri himself. 5 days later, Ezio would decide that the only way to keep his family safe was to kill the Templars on his father's list. Not only this, he would also learn about Altair's codex and his armor underneath the villa, agreeing to take on all of his father's old work and to help renovate the city of Monteriggioni, with Claudia keeping the financial records of the city. Over the course of the next 10 years, Ezio would collect codex pages and the seals that withheld Altair's armor, along with stopping Templar plots and killing the schemers. But it wouldn't be until June 25th, 1488, that he would find out what was really the cause behind the death of his father and brothers. While in Venice, on that day, he would track cargo from a ship that arrived from Cyprus to Rodrigo Borgia himself. After intending to assassinate him, a battle would commence that ended with Ezio learning that almost everyone that had guided him over the years were actually assassins. Once Niccolo Machiavelli revealed himself and these details, Ezio would join his uncle Mario, Paola, a thief he met in Florence that only went by the name La Volpe, the owner of La Rosa della Virtù, Teodora Contronato, the Venetian thief Antonio di Magnius, and the leader of the Venetian mercenaries Bartolomeo di Alviano. At a tower near the Rialto Bridge, he would formally be inducted into the Brotherhood of Assassins. After Ezio's induction, he, along with Machiavelli and his uncle, would take the cargo, an apple of Eden, to Leonardo da Vinci, who would not be able to tell them much other than it was very old. Ezio would accompany Machiavelli to Forli, where they would attempt to hide the apple with Caterina Sforza. But the involvement of the Orsini brothers on July 7, 1488, would lead to the apple being stolen by Girolamo Savonarola. Over the next 10 years, he would search for the apple that Savonarola took. Some say he spent his time recruiting assassins, while others would say that he traveled to Spain, where he would work with the local assassins to rescue the King of Granada, Muhammad XII, and help Christopher Columbus escape the Templars. But by 1497, Ezio would be in Florence, working with Paola, La Volpe, and Machiavelli to bring down Savonarola and recover the apple, doing so on May 22, 1498. During this time, another assassin, Perotto Caldron, was undercover as a carrier for the Borgia family in Rome. He would begin to bring gifts to Rodrigo's daughter Lucrezia, whom he would eventually fall in love with. This relationship would lead to a child born on March 3, 1498, that was malformed and, according to a local doctor, would die within a few days. Perotto would be thrown into jail because of this, but would eventually break out and retrieve his son Giovanni, taking him to Agnadello, where Giovanni Auditore had hidden the Shroud of Eden. In doing this, he would be forced to kill other members of the Assassin's Brotherhood, but would eventually reach the home of Rinaldo Vertui, where it would be used to heal the baby. After healing his son, Perotto would be confronted by more assassins, including his former apprentice, Francisco Vercellio. After a short battle, Perotto would be killed for breaking the creed and killing members of the Brotherhood. After collecting the rest of Altair's codex, Ezio Auditore would use the apple that he was able to retrieve from Savonarola to find that there was a temple beneath the Sixtine Chapel, and on December 28, 1499, he would arrive in Rome with the intention to assassinate Rodrigo Borgia, who was ordained Pope Alexander VI in 1492. After battling with the Pope, Ezio would enter the temple to find a hologram of the Isu Minerva, who intended to use him as a conduit for a message to Desmond Miles. After returning to Monteriggioni on January 1st, 1500, Ezio would explain what happened in the vault to his Uncle Mario, Mother Maria, and Sister Claudia, along with Machiavelli and Caterina Sforza. Machiavelli would become enraged that Ezio did not kill Rodrigo and would head to Rome. The next day, Rodrigo's son Cesare would attack Monteriggioni in a battle that would result in the death of Mario and the Borgia regaining the Apple of Eden. Riding to Rome, Ezio would eventually meet up with Machiavelli and learn just how far the city had fallen into the Borgia's rule, and vowed to regain the city for the assassins. This would take 3 years and result in the deaths of more Templars, including the Pope, and the recovery of the apple. During this time, Francesco Vercellio would be apprenticed to Ezio, and after finishing his training under him, would be placed in charge of a team of assassins who were sent to disrupt Cesare's influence over Italy. His team would consist of notable members Capranio Inu and Reza Varzi, and participate in the defense of Camerino. Fiora Cavazza would join the assassins during this time, as well as helping Francesco to hunt more Templar agents. She would eventually get a request to visit Cesare, which she would do with the intent to find the Apple of Eden. Giovanni Borgia, the son of Pirotto and Lucrezia Borgia, would think that she was there to play and take the apple and call for her to catch him. While trying to take the apple from him, Giovanni would inadvertently use it to freeze her in place and wake up Cesare, who would calmly tell Giovanni that he wouldn't hurt her. In 1503, Giovanni would receive a letter from Francesco that would lead Giovanni to leave the Borgias and join the assassins. In that same year, Francesco and his team would be lured into a trap, the only survivor of which would be Francesco. Even though Cesare was imprisoned in December 1503 by the new Pope Julius II, he would escape in 1506. During those 3 years, Ezio was acting as an advisor to the new Pope, but when he found about Cesare, he would follow him to Spain with Machiavelli, where he would assassinate him during the siege of Vienna. In 1509, Bartolomeo di Alviano would fight in the Battle of Argendello to protect the hiding spot of the Shroud of Eden, though it would fall into the hands of Niccolo di Pigandigliano. The following year, though, Francesco Vicelio was sent to kill him and retrieve the shroud, a mission in which he would succeed. During this time, Ezio would leave for Masyaf to search for Altair's library, and during the time he was gone, his sister Claudia would lead the assassins, as she had been a member since 1503, when Ezio had become the leader of the Italian Brotherhood. During her time as leader, she would deal with the declining health of Pope Julius II and receive a letter from the Dutch assassin Desterdius Erasimus about the religious thinking of Martin Luther. When Ezio returned to Rome, he would resign from the Brotherhood and choose Lodovico Aristeo as his successor, a choice that Claudia disagreed with because of his close ties to Lucrezia Borgia. In 1515, though, Ezio would train 2 assassins in Hiram Stoddard and Giovanni Borgia, who is now 17. The 2 would be sent to recover an Apple of Eden and stop a Templar plot, but would fail because of their rivalry over a woman by the name of Elena. Eventually, the 2 would get into a fight that would result in the death of Elena, and by 1519, Giovanni would be sent to Mexico with the troops of Hernan Cortez to find a piece of Eden that the Aztecs used during sacrifices. Giovanni would eventually steal the crystal skull and give it to Bombastus in 1527. Over the next 20 years, Giovanni would research the skull that would lead him to search Paris for the second half of the Book of Abraham, and eventually to the Temple of Pythagoras. After Giovanni, little is known about the Italian Brotherhood until about 2012, when a cell that was active in Florence and led by Adriano Mastrani tracked down Desmond Miles, sending an email to his father on September 5, 2012, that he was captured and taken to Rome. On November 27th, Adriano sent an email to William stating that he was preparing a raid on the Abstergo headquarters in Rome that had held Desmond. After the successful raid, they found out on November 29th that the Templars followed them back to the hideout in Florence. The following morning, a strike team led by Giovanni Azzo Berg attacked. The only survivors would be Berg himself and the assassin Harlan Cunningham, after Adriano set off a bomb to destroy the assassin's files. I would have to say that because of Ezio, we probably have spent the most time with this one group of assassins. If it wasn't for his popularity, we wouldn't have gotten so much ancillary material around his life and when he lived. We don't even know the name of the father of Domenico Auditore or what their family name was before he had infiltrated the Florentine nobles. Speaking of those early generations of Auditore, there is something I want to mention. I was thinking about how Mario could be Renato's grandson when they were born almost 100 years apart, and it hit me that while it might be possibly a mistake, it is also possible that Renato and his son had young brides late in life, as that was common in this time period to marry older men to younger women in an attempt to secure alliances. I hope we can get more information to fill the gaps between the Renaissance and modern day, though. So much happened in Italy over the course of history that I think knowing the details would mean a lot, especially for people that want to know more about what happened during World War II within the Assassin's Creed universe. Thank you for joining me today. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast, and if you have any questions about Assassin's Creed or topics that you would like me to cover, please feel free to hit me up on Twitter at visions_AC, to which a link will be in the description to this podcast. Till next time, my assassin friends, make sure to follow the creed. And to those Templars listening, may the Father of Understanding guide you.